Hey, what's up, guys? We have Dave here with Echoplex Media to talk about cults and conspiracy theories. So, how you doing today, Dave?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself
Sure.
first?
I've been podcasting for about 10 years and was blogging prior to that. Wasn't quite sure what kind of stuff I wanted to do at first. At first, I was writing a little bit about tech, some about e-commerce. But at the time, I was also kind of a prolific troll, like on Facebook, and I was trolling a lot of people. Maybe toward the end of the Obama years, when people were like afraid that FEMA was going to come get them and all that stuff. And so the content of my writing, I don't write as much as I should, but of my podcast that was audio only at the time, sort of just by nature of me being interested in that, and so a lot of my friends being interested in that, did end up going in more and more in that direction, and it became more and more what we were known for. And that's sort of how I ended up focused primarily on online influence, disinformation, and I guess high control, high demand groups that might otherwise be known as cults.
With trolling?
Well, yeah, I was making fun of people on the internet. Everybody be doing that. So,
Yeah. But that's the direction you took. Yeah, I'm actually very interested in trolling. Um, yeah, I don't think that I'm a good enough troll at it. I wanted like some friends to like help me out with doing it, like on X or Twitter or whatever. But like, I think I don't know. I would say that I'm too. I don't feel like I'm too old now, but maybe they felt like that. But I'm trying. Who are some of like the trolls that you are into? Are you so you still are trolling then?
I mean, sort of. I obviously I'm taken more seriously now as a I've been interviewed for 538 and other publications you would know about regarding primarily like during COVID the anti-vaccine movement, because I've also know a lot about that. But like one of the ops we did, you can still find remnants of it on the internet. We had there was this, if people are not going to remember this. There's a guy named Bo Bergdahl that was stationed overseas, and I wandered off base. I don't know if he was having a mental health episode,
Yeah.
but he was there was no evidence or whatever that he was trying to defect and join Al Qaeda or whatever, right? And people were saying that he was, and so there was a Facebook page that was talking about that, and we tricked them into giving us their Facebook page and covered in goats. People can find that if you just look up. It's an article still on the LA Times. You look it up. It's just look up Facebook goat troll and Los Angeles Times, and you'll be able to find the article there. I am not Bust a Troll, but I was intimately involved in that particular operation, and that was a lot of fun because people got real mad when they were going there to this page that was like hating on this guy who clearly was having clearly was not doing so well, and they wanted to go hate on him, and instead it was just pictures of goats, and they were very upset with that, if you could imagine.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think I'm on your side when it comes to that. And it seems like most of the people that I've found on Reddit that I have come on here tend to be I seem to tend to agree with in terms of politically or I don't know if it's like a Reddit thing, but I've heard that Reddit is kind of I don't know if you're liberal or Republican, but it seems like Reddit tends to be more of like a liberal type space, right? I mean, I haven't like let's put it this way, like when you came on as a cult into culture conspiracy theories, it turns out that you agree. I agree with you on, I'm not for conspiracy theories as
Now, some
opposed
of
to
them
the
turn out to
the
be true, but
opposite.
some conspiracies do turn out to be true. But it's, when that happens, it's like usually, for example, like Jeff Epstein's the big one, right? But people don't really think about this much. But a reporter named Julie K. Brown at the Miami Herald grabbed onto that story and refused to let go of it for years and years and years and years. And she's the one that exposed Jeffrey Epstein, not the Q people, not Alex Jones, not any of not any of these internet personalities who tell you that they have the truth about the world. No, it was a reporter named Julie at the Miami Herald, and nobody really knows her name. I don't know if she's rich, but I know she ain't famous, because actually uncovering a criminal conspiracy, be it via law enforcement, I have my own problems with law enforcement, but be it through detective work or through journalism, it's actually a lot of work. It's hard. People don't help you. And a lot of people are going to think that you're a crank. if you don't have all the evidence yet. You're grabbing onto a story. So it's not that conspiracies aren't true or that there are no people conspiring to do bad things. People are conspiring to do bad things right now, right? It's just that depending upon the nature of it, we're never going to find out about it because it's not bad enough, or maybe it's something bad, but it's not sexy enough that the that conspiracy media would ever even pick up on it. And so it's not that you know, it's not that people in power, people in positions of power, don't abuse their power to do bad things. It's just that finding out about it, if it's not already known, is really hard work, and you're not going to do it by scrolling YouTube.
Yeah. Well, the thing with Jeffrey Epstein is I was kind of like wondering what conspiracy should we go into, and that would actually be a perfect one. But the thing with Jeffrey Epstein is it doesn't really even come off as a conspiracy to me. It's like he was doing what he was doing. It took a while for him to get caught, and a lot of people were involved. I guess you could say that was the conspiracy. But he eventually got caught, went into jail, and either
Well, yeah,
committed suicide or somebody killed him, which I guess that could be a conspiracy. Whether, but it's
we're not
like,
going to
but
know.
yeah, and then the same thing with P Diddy. Now it's like, yeah, P Diddy, yeah, it's like P Diddy probably should have got caught sooner. Same with Jeffrey Epstein. But like you said, it takes time and it takes a lot of hard work. I think the conspiracy would probably come in with all the names on the conspiracy theory list for Jeffrey Epstein. So let me like
So,
really
real
quickly
quick on the
first,
when
yeah.
people talk about how there's like a list. I don't think that people keep a list of like crime people who I do crimes with. So the idea that there's some master list of everybody that he did any of the alleged crimes with or whatever, that's kind of stupid. If you were doing a bunch of crime, would you write it all down?
No, but the question is did well, for one, did somebody have the list? And then two, why is Bill Clinton, I think Trump, Clinton, Elon Musk is a picture. Um, I mean, who else? Like that lawyer. But it's like all these big
Dershowitz.
Dershowitz. It's like all these big, even like Woody Harrelson, right?
So there's a line in the sand too there, and I forget what year it was. It was in the maybe mid or late 2000s when he got busted the first time and got a slap on the wrist. Anybody who was associated with him before that, you could excuse as just being like, well, this is just a rich guy with a plane, and I'm just associating with other rich people. After that, people who chose to continue to hang out with him, including famous scientists and public intellectuals like Steven Pinker, Lawrence Krauss. You mentioned Bill Gates, Donald Trump. I don't know if Bill Clinton
Steven
continued. I don't know if Bill
Steven
Clinton continued.
Pinker,
Yeah, Steven Pinker.
like the writer, right? He's
Yep.
like supposed to be like a really like solid, like good guy writer type.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He uh, continued to associate with Jeff Epstein after he knew about the first trial. And the reason we know that he knew about the first trial is that he was an expert witness in the first trial.
So have well, if he was a witness, I would imagine we know why his
Yes,
reasoning for
yes.
being there. What is his what did he say he was doing?
If you if you want to do an experiment, if you've never interacted with Steven Pinker, if you just go on to Twitter and type the word Pinker and then the word Epstein, wait a couple days, go look at Steven Pinker's profile, he will have blocked you.
So well, I mean, what is well,
Nothing.
that sounds a little conspiratorial, right? I mean,
Well, he's not saying nothing about it because he doesn't have to, because the kinds of people he runs with, like the Sam Harrises of the world, the Jordan Petersons of the world, the Michael Shermers of the world, all these public intellectual types, they're never going to ask him about it. So he doesn't ever have to answer.
well, I mean, there's an issue there then, right? Like, there's an issue. Like, I don't really, like I said, I don't really necessarily think I don't know enough about it, really, honestly, but it's like, I don't think it's necessarily a conspiracy. But at the same time, why aren't more people talking about what actually happened? Like you just said, like he's just kind of shunning it. Like, how do you shun? Like, do we know if he was on the plane? Did he go over to the island? Like, or was it just kind of like he was dealing with like finances with them or something?
So I haven't looked that deeply into it. My primary focus there is to just anytime anybody mentions Steven Pinker is to be like, oh, you have a very fond opinion of a very good friend of Jeffrey Epstein. I don't know if he was on the flight logs. That'd be easy enough to check, but I didn't spend my main interest in Pinker, or not in Pinker. I'm sorry, in Epstein. Well, first of all, I mean, what he was doing was horrific, and he got away with it for far too long. But it's just that a lot of the public intellectuals that we talk about on our show about the intellectual dark web ended up being friends of Jeff Epstein, and that's how I ended up like becoming interested in him just in that way. These people who say that they're these moral paragons, and Pinker is a perfect example, right? Because his books are all about ethics and morality and how the world is becoming a better place. And I don't know, he has this affect like he's this very smart, very kind person, but he knew what was going on and he was still associating with the guy. And so it's just interesting to see like what kinds of people were associated with him. And it doesn't really line up with what the conspiracy theory narrative is about, like human trafficking and child trafficking, right? Because people would think that, like you had mentioned, Elon, I don't know how associated he was with it, but people who are, I guess, kind of QAnon adjacent or Pizzagate adjacent would tend to like Elon Musk, even though he's associated with that. So I don't, I think that insofar as like very conspiracy minded people talk about Epstein, I think they only want to talk about it so that they can tell you, well, look, we do know that there's child trafficking, or, they weren't children, they were teenagers, but they're still minors. And they just want to use it as an example, even without ever having looked very deeply into it. And so, it's just really, and that's the way it all works, really. It's just like a bunch of conspiracy theorists, a lot of them. And I do want to maybe draw a distinction here because I think we all know people who've gone down a rabbit hole because they liked a set of creators and they're not the ones spreading these things. They just believe them because they've been told by people who appear to be smart or well read or whatever. And I want to draw some distinctions between those people who I think are victimized by an internet hate machine versus the people operating the internet hate machine. But I think a lot of the people operating the internet hate machine are just going to use Epstein as a prop, really, so that they can say, well, look, this happened.
You mean the people you mean it almost sounds like by what you're saying, there's a little bit of like a conspiracy there, right? Like the people who are propping the internet hate machine, that in itself would almost be this Illuminati type group who's like behind. I mean, do you believe that that's going on or
So I don't think that these people that, first of all, I think like people don't have to coordinate to have their interests align, right? Like, so for example, I the BP and Exxon, I don't know if they're coordinating, but their interests sure are going the same way, right? They're going to act in much the same way because they're these big oil companies. And I think that it applies to, people who run big conspiracy outlets like Dark Horse with the Brett Weinstein and Heather Heying, Alex Jones, the most famous one, or like Jack
yeah.
Posobiec or whatever. Those people don't have to be coordinating for their cars to basically be going in the same direction toward the same place,
Yeah, yeah. So you don't necessarily think it's a conspiracy theory as opposed to just something that's just naturally happening, like for obvious mutual benefit. But like, so you've already named a couple things that I'm interested in, which is one, Jeffrey Epstein, and then two, um, the intellectual dark web. I'm very interested in the intellectual web, mostly for kind of like almost like comedic reasons, because I think that the whole thing's just kind of like bullshit. And you got Jordan Peterson who's just gone fucking nuts. And I like Sam Harris, but he's kind of been like distanced from the group. I don't know if you noticed that. And then you got like what Ben Shapiro, you got Eric Weinstein, which is he seems pretty crazy,
You don't
right?
say.
And then Brett Weinstein, who also, but with this being said, Ben Shapiro, I mean, Dave Rubin, who all I see him doing is just kind of like reacting to, he's showing clips and just kind of talking about what's happening. But anyway, so yeah. So the intellectual dark web, what are your thoughts on them? Basically, you agree with me, like
We're
they're
on
just kind of like uh grifters.
we're on episode 258 of our show called The Intellectual Dollar Tree, which is clearly a show designed to make fun of them. Um,
Yeah.
so so I think that I think that just a lot of people, and you said you like Sam Harris. I have a different opinion. It's a lot of people that just want to say their thing and then don't want anyone criticizing them. So what they've done is they've set up a,
but yet they're for like free speech. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Well, they've set up a network where basically they all interview each other, and then they'll like disagree on something really minute, something really unimportant, right? They'll be like, look at this wonderful exchange of ideas. When when you take any of the issues of the day, be they like science literacy and conspiracism, or if you take any of the culture war issues, or you take any even to some extent like uh, deep love for capitalism and fear of communism, all that stuff. There, you're not going to find any of them people disagreeing about those things. But then, like, one of them's gonna, break off a little bit and be like, well, I think most vaccines are okay, but just not this one. Whereas the other person's going to be like, I think all the vaccines are bad. And it's like, oh, we disagree. Look at this. We're having a debate. And it's like, no, you're not. Like,
it's like it's a bullshit debate. That's all it is on most like Joe Rogan. It's like a bullshit debate where it's like he'll have, and I think people are having a problem with him about this, where it's like he'll talk shit on someone, but then he'll have them on and he'll like kind of fully agree with what they have to say. But like you said, they might disagree on like one thing, which I do give him credit for. Like he had Ben Shapiro on, he had Matt Walsh on, and he does give them shit about like gay right stuff. But the rest of it, it's like they kind of, even though they're arguing, they're kind of like agreeing at the same time about like the trans stuff. They'll be like, look at what's going on with the trans stuff in the schools, and it's like it's almost like really not even probably happening that way, but like they're talking about how the schools are like trying to like turn the kids trans or whatever. But
right.
it's just like you're arguing something that's like not even like really I mean, even Bill Maher. I don't know if you listen to Bill Maher at all, but it's like I've been listening to him, not taking him seriously, but he'll go like I agree with most of what he has to say, but anything that he says against the left, the anti woke stuff. I mean, most of it's like not even like really. It's just like baseless. It's just like
Well,
this
the
isn't
other
even
thing is,
really happening, is it? Like, you know what
well,
I mean?
I mean, you could think of something stupid that somebody might think and find somebody on Twitter saying it, but that's different than it being like part of the culture, right? Like, there are people, for example, the dumbest conspiracy theory, right? The flat Earth. There's people who believe in flat Earth, but that was never really a part of the culture, right? You were never going to take a poll of Americans and find more than maybe 2% of people who legitimately think the Earth is flat. So I think,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean that it's not going to blow up on Twitter and Facebook and have all these groups with tens of thousands of people, even 100,000. But what percentage of America is 100,000 people? Ain't shit, right? And so people get this kind of false idea of how big something is because they see a Facebook group with this many people, or they see a YouTube creator, and they think it's bigger than it really is, but it's not. And I don't, you know, the stuff about drag queens, like reading to kids. For like young kids, a drag queen is just like a different kind of clown, right? It's just fun. And they're like, oh, this is a strip show. And I'm like, that drag queen is wearing fucking 3 outfits at the same time. I don't know what you're talking about. She's wearing so much clothes. Like,
Yeah, well, don't get me wrong. Like, I don't necessarily think that they should have, and I guess they really did do that, right? They shouldn't necessarily have like drag queens um reading to kids. And it's not
eh,
even like I'm against, you can say like why not, but it's like to a certain extent I can see why doing that would, I can see why parents would get pissed off.
well, but that's different than whether like you can piss off a parent. I have a friend who used to do communication for the school district, and you could piss a parent off about anything. Let me tell you.
No, yeah, I agree with that. But um, I mean, I do think that, yeah, I don't know. I do think that there is a line,
Right,
but
right. But these are also
the
like
question
opt
is,
in, right? These are opt in at the public library, a very safe place where there's a lot of adults around. The parents usually go with their kids to these kinds of things. Like it's totally opt in. I'm generally against compelled anything, right? Like if the kids were compelled to go to a drag show at a public school, well, I'd be just as against that as I am against compelling them to pledge the flag every morning, because it's like this doesn't really have anything to do with what they're supposed to be there for in the first place. Now, it's if there's a club and at lunch, you know, or whatever, that they want to have a drag show for their club or whatever, fine. That's opt in again. I think that there's a big difference between whether if something's compelled or if it's optional and kind of comes out of the students. I think it's really important to kind of draw those distinctions. The other thing I think is really important as far as the schools goes to understand that the people working at those schools are taking less money than they could make in the private sector. They're highly skilled people, and they're obviously there because they want to provide good education. Obviously, there's abusive people in any system, and with the number of schools, there's going to be people at the schools that abuse kids, but there's people at the church that abuse kids. There's people at the Boy Scouts that abuse kids. There's people at the Girl Scouts that, you get enough people together, somebody's going to be a monster. But I think it's like super important to like draw some distinctions between like compelled and optional. And I think the drag queen story hour at the library is optional. And so that like, I'm just like,
Well, well, for one, what do you mean compelled?
oh, like if there was an assembly that all the school kids had to go to, where there was a drag queen
like
show
they're
at it.
forcing them. Yeah, so they're
Yeah.
not forcing them to do it. It's optional, and I'm assuming that the parents are involved with that optional
Well,
process
for
where it's
first,
like if you don't want your kids going, they don't have to type thing. Well, the
right.
whole thing is that so I'm not necessarily against drag queens, but at the same time, I'm not like I don't think they're like bad people. I don't, but it's like I think that like just having them show up to schools, a lot to teach or something is just kind of weird. It's like
Well,
I just,
these tend
but
not
the
to be at
my
public schools. They tend to be at the library.
yeah, that's the whole thing is I don't know enough about it, so I'm not like debating you on
Yeah.
it.
Well,
But my
I'm
whole
just saying
point,
they tend to be at the library. I don't think this is happening. I don't think this happens at public schools. I think that's a distraction. I couldn't imagine being a principal of a public school and wanting to do that and wanting to even if I thought it would be fun for the kids, the principal of a public school does not want to deal with all them fucking parents that aren't going to like this, even if it is optional. So,
I mean, that's the whole thing is I'm not going to be able to debate it because I don't even know enough about it. But my original point with like people kind of talking about it is like how often is this happening? Is it optional, like we said? And like what you just said, it's at the public library. Obviously, it's optional. I'm assuming, right? Like they're not forcing the kids to go to this drag queen show.
oh, I don't think so. It'd
No.
be
So
weird.
but like it's kind of like one of those same thing with like the trans and like the with the bathroom. My whole point is like the trans, with using the bathroom. It's kind of like how often are we really dealing with this? Like I've never walked into a bathroom, saw a trans person, and then it bothered me. It was like it wouldn't probably bother me, but I've never encountered it. So it's like maybe it's
When you
different
go
when
to the
you have.
bathroom, right? If you go to a public bathroom, aren't you just trying to go in there, take care of your business? Hopefully you don't have to take a dump and then just get out of the public bathroom. Hopefully just whatever, just wash your hands, friend.
No, yeah, exactly. But the thing is that the difference that the only thing that I could say that they have against any debate that I would have is I don't have kids. So it's like they can say, "Oh, well, I don't want my kid going to the bathroom and having some trans person in there," which they're automatically assuming the trans person's like going to be a molester or something, which just isn't true. But that's and the same thing with the kids in the schools. It's kind of like when I hear them talk about this stuff, what's going on in the schools, I automatically think bullshit. But at the same time, I don't have kids and like my
Right.
yeah. So like my sister and her husband actually like literally took their kids out of a private school, a Christian school, because it wasn't Christian enough for them or whatever. And to me, it's kind of like, isn't that a little extreme? Like they're being homeschooled now. It's isn't that a little extreme? And it's like, well, they can say you don't have kids.
Right.
This is our decision, and that's
Um,
true. So
I don't know about this particular case. I think the only one of the main issues with homeschooling is that the kids aren't just at school to learn math and writing. The kids are at school to learn how to get along with the other kids,
yeah,
and
no,
that's
I
important.
agree
Those
with
are
you.
important. Those are important life skills you learn, like how to like not like somebody and not worry about it. Like those kinds of things are like really important, and I think that gets kind of left out of the homeschool discussion a lot. Um, because you're there to be socialized. You're there to you're there to maybe even learn how to deal with a bully, you know?
Yeah, and like you just said, they're there to get along, and I think that's why they're saying, hey, if you feel like you might be a woman or a man or whatever, it's fine. Don't make fun of the other kids, right? Like they're trying to make it so it's not this like weird thing like it was in the 1950s, right? Like in the 1950s, if you were gay or trans, you would probably get bullied. Today, they're trying to make it everything acceptable, which is fine,
Well, the
right?
school, I mean, if, as a young person, especially if you're having like your own set of issues, you should be able to go to school, do your work, maybe hang out with your friends if you have some, and have the other kids not torment you. That seems it seems pretty fair to me.
Yeah, but like just to I kind of want to stick on a topic because we've already kind of gone on multiple topics and because of time. So let's just I guess let's just try and I'm normally fine with like going off on stuff, but it's like because of time and I feel like there's a lot to talk about that I could just like jump from topic to topic, but I think we've already come up with the two, which would be the intellectual dark web, and then also Jeffrey Epstein. So if that's fine with you,
Yeah,
but I mean, I feel like we could like there's so many different conspiracy theories and cults and all this stuff that it's like we could just jump from one to the next. But so as far as the intellectual dark web, like you said, you do you have an issue with all of them? Well, for one, Sam Harris. Like, what's your issue with Sam Harris?
that he is a very thin-skinned trust fund baby who never had to struggle ever in his life, and thinks that anybody making fun of him on the internet is like the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah, so I would probably agree with you on most of them in that group, but from I listened to his I'm assuming you probably listen to his podcast, right? Just so you have
Not
stuff to like
everyone, not everyone, not every
certain
episode,
ones.
but yeah.
But most of them, I would like definitely Jordan Peterson has just totally gone off, right? I would say he's probably gone off the rails more than any of them, right?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to compare, right? Because for my money or whatever, I think the most delusional of the lot is Eric Weinstein.
Weinstein. I mean, he'll go on Joe Rogan and like I mean maybe I'm just not smart enough, but like I don't understand half of what he's saying. And same with Jordan Peterson. I don't
So the
understand what they're saying.
so what they do there, it's a guy named Alex, another extremism researcher, actually came up with this idea. He calls it academic window dressing, where what you do is, because you know you're not talking to other academics, you're not talking to other experts, you will say a bunch of things, use a bunch of sort of jargon from maybe a field that you're familiar with, and in the process of doing that, you are making people who are not familiar with the field almost feel like they're now more familiar with it because they listen to you, and it sort of covers up for the fact that maybe you're lying, or that you're not really saying anything, or if you are saying anything, it's not new or interesting. And so it's just, like when Eric goes on to shows and starts talking about complex math, I'm fairly confident that he knows what he's talking about, but it's not there to like inform people. It's there so that people go, God damn, this guy's smart. But if
Yeah.
you've ever met anybody who's like really good at a subject matter and has talked to you about it, if they've if you've learned anything from them, they're not using a bunch of jargon. They're going to explain things to you in a way that they maybe meet you where you're at and try to explain a concept to you that they're very well familiar with, but in a way that you're going to understand. That's the opposite of what especially Eric Weinstein does, because you just leave there, you're like, I don't even remember what he said, but you could be like, well, that means he's not a very good science communicator and I should ignore him. Or other people, maybe people who are in desperate need of a hero or of like an internet dad, they'll be like, God damn, that guy's smart and I want to be like him.
Yeah, it's a way to basically say a bunch of stuff that most people aren't going to understand, and therefore it could be lies, it could be truth, and it also just makes you sound smarter. Like I recently is have you heard of like Donald Hoffman at all?
No, that's a name I haven't heard.
Yeah, so he's kind of out of this wheelhouse because he's more into like do you know about consciousness type stuff at all?
I,
Like
I I listen to some of those kinds of people. I'm trying to think of somebody who does stuff like that. Maybe
yeah,
maybe Dr. K, Healthy Gamer, does a little bit of that stuff. Um, but I would you say his name's Donald Hoffman?
Yeah, yeah, we'll probably want to stay away from. I probably shouldn't even have brought him up because it's a complete. It's kind of out of. He's kind of he would kind of be in the Sam Harris wheelhouse. He's been on Sam Harris because you know how Sam Harris talks about consciousness and stuff. Well, anyways, he went on. He recently went on Jordan. So he basically is saying, and I don't really want to go too far down this road because it's a completely different topic, which I would want to get into, but we're on one other one. But so he went on. He's been going on podcasts. This was probably a couple of years ago, where he's saying that he has proven, and I don't really know if this guy's legit or not. People on the Sam Harris subreddit are saying that he's like a quack, like he's not legit, but he's basically saying that like when we see the world, we're not really seeing the world the way it is. Like we're living inside of like kind of like a video game would be the best way to like he says we're inside of a headset.
Huh.
Anyways, my point is he went on Jordan Peterson and he's like, explaining his theory or whatever. And then Jordan Peterson immediately he's the type of guy who would, the reason why I bring him up is because he would be the type of guy who would go on Joe Rogan, but he hasn't. So Jordan Peterson immediately goes into this like weird kind of like metaphorical, like examining of what he said, which made no sense to me. Like he never makes any sense to me at all.
Yeah, it's just a lot of words, and a lot of times they're kind of big words, or they're words that you may not immediately know the meaning of, that you may have to kind of break the word down. Like if you're like, depending on who you are, you may just look it up, or you could kind of break it down maybe and figure out what it means based on the context. And I think a lot of them they like to do that because it first of all it allows them to avoid actually talking about anything real, so that they don't ever have to like take a position on anything important. But then also again, it just kind of fools a bunch of like a bunch of dudes, and at least people's fans are almost all dudes, right? Into like thinking, oh, now I'm an intellectual because I understand Jordan Peterson, and it's like, no, you don't.
Yeah. Well, the big question is do you think that what somebody like Jordan Peterson is actually saying, like, do you think he can legitimately make sense of what he's saying? Like, it's true to him. You don't understand it, but what he's saying still makes sense to him. Or do you think he's just completely full of shit and he's just throwing out words and like metaphors and stuff to the Bible or whatever?
I'm probably a little of column A, a little of column B. I mean, it's in the end, like for me, it really doesn't matter, right? If he believes the things that he's saying, or if he's doing it because of audience capture, or if he's doing it because he just wants to make money. To me, in the end, he's got this massive audience, and he's saying what he's saying, and it's having the impact on, a lot of, lonely people, actually. A lot of lonely people who, maybe don't have good relationships with their friends, or don't really have a lot of friends, or have, become estranged from their family and don't have any ties to their community. And so they're sort of replacing all of that stuff with these sort of like internet fathers. And I think it's quite bad. I think it's quite bad for, particularly, I'm older, but I'm thinking it's quite particularly bad for men under 30, that this is the media space that they find when they go to a place like YouTube.
Well, I mean, the big question with all these guys with cults, this could go for any of these, this whole world of cults and conspiracy theories. With any of these guys, such as Alex Jones is probably the top dog in terms of conspiracy theories, right? But any of these, you might be able to say that like Jordan Peterson's a conspiracy theorist or any of them. I
Well,
don't
I
know
mean,
if
we
you
all
consider
are.
them.
I mean, we
Well, we
all are
all
about
are, but I
something.
mean, you know what I mean, like somebody who is like a legit. But with any of these guys, Alex Jones, Jordan Peterson, any of the intellectual dark web, do you think they honestly know that they're just spitting bullshit? Like, do you think Jordan Peterson's probably the best one because he seems to kind of like ride that line between totally insane and like the smartest guy in the world? Whereas Alex Jones, I think most people just kind of know he's crazy. But do you think that, well, with any of them, do you think that they know what they're doing? Like they're really smart and they're like, I'm just gonna fucking trick these kids into thinking like bullshit and like make a ton of money from doing it, like
So I don't think
grifting basically.
I'm not sure it's that simple, right? Because that would be incredibly simple. Like these are
That
other
would be
human beings.
evil.
These are other human beings who have like complicated ways of viewing the world and complicated ways of viewing themselves, just like anybody that you know, anybody, your friends, your family, they are all complicated. So I think a lot of times that first taste of fame, it really matters what were they doing, what were they saying when they started to get their first taste of real fame. And then at that point, I think many people, not just IDW types, I think people, some people in my media space are doing this or are prone to this, and I'm sure prone to it. Start getting, I start making people in the chat on my Twitch laugh, and numbers start going up and stuff and whatever. Yeah, that captures me for a while, and I continue down that road. I have the guardrails, and there are people who are there every night who would leave if that was just the only road I went down. So I think it's like a combination of things. And I do think that I think a lot of people underestimate the power of fame or what feels like fame to someone. And I think that I think people will be willing to do and say a lot of things they might not otherwise do and say if they feel like they can maintain their status as like a popular creator, a popular public intellectual, whatever it is. I think that's a pretty powerful motivator for a lot of people, even if they're already rich.
Yeah, it's probably like really, if you think about it, like a similar thing to music. Like if you're making a certain type of music, the thing is where I have like a disagreement to that, not a disagreement, but it would be similar to music in the sense that if you make a hit and then that hit does really well, you sell millions of records from that hit or whatever, then you want to go down the road of the hit. You don't want to go down, you want to use the songs that are working. The thing is though, and I would call that selling out to a certain extent in its most obvious form. The thing is where I have not a disagreement, but where I have like a but is kind of like I don't really think that you should, and I don't think that you would. I don't think you would. I don't think I would. I'm assuming. I don't think that you should ever be saying things that like you're not fully in agreement with. So why are they kind of going down this weird road if you're always being honest? And Jordan Peterson, for one, is somebody who is like always be honest. So it's like he should always be saying things that he really believes. He shouldn't be like offhandedly saying some weird thing and it works. You know what I mean? You see what I'm
So,
saying?
I mean, for any well-known person, I kind of look at what they do and what they like and what they say, but not like what they say they believe or what they say their values are, right? Like, you know, I could run around, I don't know, I could run around telling everybody that I believe the moon is a hollow sphere, but then like you would consume my content and be like, this dude doesn't believe that. Why is he running around saying that? Right? Because you could consume on my other content and like whatever. So I think it's like I don't really like when they say, oh, a lot of them they'll be like, oh, if somebody does this or that in bad faith, then that's really bad. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't think you care about that either. I think that a lot of times what they say they believe or what they say that they want to see happen in the world is almost more often used as a deflection from criticism of their work than it is used like as like advice for their followers.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know about that. I mean, I don't know if I necessarily. So you're saying like he might be saying it in defense to criticism from his work,
Yeah, like
as he,
for example, I don't know if you're familiar with the debacle with Sam Harris when he had the bell curve guy on, that Charles Murray guy. There was like a big hubbub about that, and after he spent a long
was
time,
that like
like,
the truth one where they were like debating what is truth or whatever?
no, it was
Uh,
the it's called Forbidden Conversations, and it was about the pseudoscience of IQ testing as it pertains to disparate racial groups. Um,
so
and
sorry, was this with Sam Harris and
Charles Murray.
okay? I was thinking you meant Jordan Peterson, but okay,
No,
yeah, yeah.
no, but they all these guys flirt with that pseudoscience. But you
I
know,
know what you're talking about, but I don't know if I listened to it. But anyways, yeah.
so for example, Sam Harris in that thing said, "I'm not interested in the topic of race and IQ." Like at the beginning of the show, then he spent a whole show talking about the topic of race and IQ, right? And agreeing with the guy who wrote the book about it. And it's like, well, I don't really care what you said. Like you clearly do care about this, or you care about it insofar as you're going to get listens and views and become popular among people who care about this. So like, I don't care what you said. Like, so this is what I'm, these are like, um, I guess the guys from the Decoding the Gurus podcast call these strategic disclaimers, where you will say, I'm not interested in X, Y, and Z, and then go on talking about X, Y, and Z. And you say, but see, I told you I wasn't interested in it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, I totally agree with you there, because it's like that whole race thing. Like, yeah, they basically just say, I mean, to a certain extent, I kind of see what they're saying, like with it, because they're like, race shouldn't matter. Like Bill Maher will kind of say that same kind of thing, where it's like everyone's putting so much emphasis on race, but it shouldn't, but race shouldn't matter. And to a certain extent, like they're right. I see
But
they're
the
right
people I
that
hear
yes,
saying that are like rich white guys.
no, yeah, yeah. No, don't get me wrong. I totally agree with you on it. And there's something that like rubs me the wrong way in a very kind of obvious way about most of them. The thing with Sam Harris is that um it's like I feel like he's coming from like an honest place. Um
I mean, I guess I don't know.
okay,
I don't know.
not even not even so much honest, but like um I feel like he's the most. So I've listened to a lot of them, and I obviously find a lot of them interesting. But I kind of feel like with Sam Harris's takes on things, they're the most like rational, kind of like they make the most sense. He never really gets angry. He just kind of like says what he thinks. And I might not agree with him on everything that he says, but I kind of feel like it makes the most sense. But then Jordan Peterson went on Joe Rogan, and he's like, "Oh, like Sam Harris is kind of lost the plot." And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like he's lost the plot. Like he's explained everything as clearly as possible.
I
And
think that's
yeah,
one of
like
the tricks that he that Sam Harris pulls is that he tell. So, for example, when I look at the list of, like, if I go find the podcast that he does where he gets the biggest audience, it's people like Douglas Murray, it's people like uh, Charles Murray. It's, it's never like if he has another neuroscientist on to talk about something going on in neuroscience, or if he has an immunologist on to maybe try to refute some of what Brett Weinstein is saying about vaccines. Those don't do numbers, but he has Douglas Murray on, who thinks that the black and brown hordes are going to take over Europe. He has him on, and that podcast does really, really well. And you don't really hear Sam Harris like pushing back on that, even though he would tell you in another podcast that he doesn't believe the crap that this guy's saying.
yeah,
And it's like,
yeah.
it's,
It's I mean it's kind of just like a racist take, essentially, right? I mean
yeah. And
it's almost
it's
like
like I said,
it just it's
what do
almost
they,
just clearly racist, right?
right? And I
I
just
don't
wonder,
know
like,
enough.
what do
Yeah.
people do, and who do they choose to associate with? If they're your friend, okay, whatever. If they tell you something, that's different. That's an interpersonal relationship, right? But if somebody's like a public figure and they are platforming, uh, I don't know, just vile people with vile ideas, and being polite to them, like, you don't have to be like a total asshole and scream at your guest to be like, what the fuck are you talking about, right? And but instead, if you're glad handing with those kinds of people and being like, oh, isn't it a shame that everybody's being so mean to you, well, then you end up, that's certainly carries, at least for me, that carries a lot more weight than somebody going, oh, I don't really agree with those ideas, when that person isn't right in front of them. It's like, what are you doing? Why are you telling us this now? You just had this person on your show last week. You what the fuck were you interviewing them for?
Yeah, well, the problem with that though is I think that they're if you're saying that in reference to like what Jordan Peterson said about Sam Harris or whatever, the problem with that is they're all kind of full of shit, just on
Yes.
kind of different levels. So it's like, yeah, well, the thing is with Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson is I kind of feel like they've actually always they've never really gotten along, and so I guess that would be the most honest of
uh,
conversations that they've had, right?
I
Because
I've I've only
that
seen
first
them. I've only seen them talk a couple times, and I think one of them they were both on Dave Rubin's show. But I'm not 100% sure. But like, I think if you go on Dave Rubin's show, you might as well just put a blender in your head and scramble your brain around a little bit before you go on to Dave Rubin's show. So
it makes no sense. Like I was saying, anything that I've seen from him on YouTube, which is fine if you do reaction videos, but he's not. He's just Like he has a very obvious agenda to what he's doing, which is like, look, this person said this on this show, and they're wrong. Watch it. And it. So what do you think of those types of guys? Like,
Well,
I
I
mean,
mean, I'm kind of one of those types of guys in
I
a lot of ways. I mean, I do media. Most of what I do is like media analysis, but it's not like
well,
media
no,
analysis
that's
of NBC or of CBS. It's going to be media analysis of people like Dave Rubin or of a flat earther. If we do Flat Earth Friday on Conspiracy Bingo sometime, and to do media analysis, you often have to run clips of the media. And I think Dave Rubin would tell you that he's doing media analysis. I think the problem with Dave Rubin is that I think he is a very dumb and opportunistic person who doesn't really have
that's my
anything
point.
interesting to say or anything interesting to offer. And I
No,
think that
that was my original point, and I don't really want to come off like yeah. So my original point was like I'm totally fine with media analysis. Like I literally wanted to have a show where I actually did for a period of time have a show where we were doing that. And I think that honestly, it's a good idea for a show to like look at this clip, and this is I'm going to debunk this clip. But the problem with Dave Rubin is he's not doing any debunking or adding to. He's just kind of saying, "Look, this is what happens. Here's the clip." And I
right.
haven't watched like his whole show, so maybe he's doing more than that. I just
How
watched
could
the
you sit through
clips.
an hour of his show?
But when I yeah no exactly. But when I asked the question, and I don't really want to like frame this in a bad way, but like what do you think about the people who are like gay, like him and like Glenn Greenwald, or even kind of like a Candace Owens type person,
Um,
who it seems like they're kind of going against their own, like what's benefiting them? Is that a grift? Do you think, or do you
I
think they really just believe what they've come to really believe what they say, or audience
um,
capture type thing?
I think it's money.
Yeah, but the big question is behind the money is do you believe that they say do you think they believe what they're saying, or at this point are they just completely just full of shit and just
I
whatever's going to
think
make them the most money?
I think Dave Rubin is a special case. He married another guy named Dave, and my take on that is that he married another guy named Dave so that he doesn't forget his husband's name. I think Dave Rubin is mind expandingly stupid. And so I think that like putting him in a category with other people who I think are like more sophisticated propagandists, I think, and that's just my opinion, but I think it's a mistake. I think Candace Owens is a fairly sophisticated propagandist. I think Glenn Greenwald is a fairly sophisticated propagandist. Whereas I think Dave Rubin fucking, I don't know, probably puts his shoes on the wrong feet sometimes.
Yeah, well, my whole problem with the whole like your answer to the question before, which I think was a totally justifiable answer, but my problem with it still is like when I asked you, do they know that they're lying or they just
Oh, but
or not?
I don't know.
Well, you don't know for one, and then for two, you said that it's complicated. I get that, but the thing is that if people are going on, like if Candace Owens is going on to her show and saying things that she knows aren't true, and she's just saying them for money, that's a fucking horrible thing to do, in my opinion. I mean, it's like it's almost like evil or something to be like, look at this, and this, and you know the COVID and how awful is the left and blah blah blah. But like if they're lying while doing it, you're just a professional liar essentially. So,
Yeah, but they've
but
always
then that's
existed. We've
no, I
always
know
had
they've
them in
always
our society.
existed, and I know you don't know what Candace Owens really believes, but so I guess right, like she could really just believe what she's saying, right? But like you think that her and Glenn Greenwald, and I don't really know enough honestly about Glenn Greenwald or even her to say I can't say that she's lying, but it's like
I
don't you think they're smart enough to believe their own bullshit that they're spitting? Like I don't get
So
it.
that
Like you know,
that's why want to put that's why I like to put Dave Rubin off into a different category because I think he's dumb. And no, I think he's dumb.
no, yeah, yeah,
I don't
it's
whatever.
justifiable for him,
I know
right?
well no, it's still bad, but I think he's dumb, and I think that's very different than you had mentioned Glenn Greenwald, where Glenn Greenwald. No, I think Glenn Greenwald knows exactly what he's doing. I think it'd be very difficult for him not to. But I don't know that if he knows exactly what he's doing and he still thinks it's the right thing to do. Like that's a different right. It's very different to ask, do you know what you're doing, and do you know exactly what's going on here, and what manipulation and influence tactics you're using? And that's a different question from, do you think you're doing a good thing? And so I think it's perfectly possible that Glenn Greenwald knows that he's using patterns of deception, online influence techniques, and other sorts of things you wouldn't want maybe a friend of yours to use on you. But there may be a way in which he thinks that the ends justify the means because he thinks he's in the end doing the right thing.
Yeah, well, like, do you know who like this is kind of another? He's a little bit off this group, but like, do you know who Tim Dillon is? Like, he's been on. If you watch Joe Rogan, he's been on there probably 5 to 10 times.
The name sounds familiar, but I couldn't say that I know that much about Tim Dillon. Is he a comedian?
Yeah, so he's like this. He's this overweight comedian, and he's funny and he's fucking smart. If you ever get a chance to listen to his podcast, but it's like so brutal. Like he is so fucking brutal. And I'm like, the only way that this guy has got, and he's huge, he's massive. His podcast makes like $200,000 a month on Patreon, and I'm like, the only way that this guy can justify what he's doing, which is what I think that he's doing, is I think that he was smaller before. He was like a drug addict before. He wasn't doing good, and then he realized, oh wait, I need to be extremely controversial and say the most fucking craziest shit to get big. And guess what? It's working. So it's like it's almost like the type of thing where if you want to make it on YouTube, if you want to make it in comedy and you want to make money, you almost have to do that. But I feel like there is a way to do that with being honest.
Yeah,
And
I think, and I want to I do like to generally section off comedy, especially people who have the guts to go do stand up, even if they're already already rich or whatever, because that's like instant
I think
reaction from a
I think
crowd,
he
and I
is
think that's very
smart.
different. I think it's very different from what like controversial YouTube creators are doing. I
The
think it's just
thing is
very different.
to justify the reason why I brought him up, he's not a typical comedian. Like, he talks a lot about politics. So go on Joe Rogan and I'll talk for an hour about, what he thinks we're doing wrong in like fucking Russia and Ukraine and Israel. And he'll basically just make fun of what's going on in Israel. So he's like somebody who is just, even though he's a comedian, like he knows what's going on politically and he talks about politics. Is probably half of his thing is making fun of politics. Anyways,
So,
but we
but in
can
that
definitely get
space, in that
we can
he gets
definitely get
away with
off
it
of him though.
if he's funny. He's funny in a way. Sorry, if he's funny in a way that like connects with people, then then he's funny, and that's how he gets away with it.
Yeah, but the thing is that I feel like that whole comedy bit that like Joe Rogan, like, I'm just a fucking comedian. It's like you're a comedian who has a podcast who millions of people listen to, and you're bringing on those fucking grifters left and right, which I think that Joe Rogan probably really is just being grifted. So I want to go to the next thing, which would be um what's on the same subject, but basically it's like is just that is damn, I lost my I lost my train of thought. But um oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so I know a lot of people who are really into Trump. Basically, they're MAGA people, and they're into all this type of everything that goes along with MAGA, which is conspiracy theories and blah, Alex Jones, whatever. And I'm like, how do, and it goes along with this whole intellectual dark web group. How do these people? How can they, like? I don't know if like just the average day guy is getting grifted, or if and he's just part of his Republican group, or what the fuck's going on? Like, believing in the whole like anti-vax type, the vax kills you type thing. That all this stuff. So do you think that most of the people are actually getting lied to and believing it, or like, or they're just kind of going along with what their party says?
So there's a lot of stuff there. I kind of don't
Yeah,
like to talk. I don't spend a lot of time on my show talking about electoral politics. A lot of other people, it's a crowded space, and other people do it better than me. Shout out to Sam Cedar on the Majority Report. Um,
yeah,
I, but when you're talking about like the end user, we'll say the believer in something like that the COVID. Let's use a fun one. Remember when people thought that the COVID vaccine had like little robots in it that the 5G towers were going to activate inside of you? So I think that I
kind
think
of.
I think that
Yeah,
comes from a couple places. There's a distrust of the pharmaceutical industry, which is, a reasonable reasonable group of people to have a general distrust for. I think people are also even though everybody's always on their cell phone all the time, there's going to be people who the next time when 6G comes out, whatever that's going to look like, right? When that comes out, there's going to be people that think that that's the radio waves from that are going to harm you. And I think there's distrust of institutions and then fear of the unknown are at play there. Distrust of institutions is fine, right? It's total, I don't, I'm not going to, like if if the vaccine was developed and they're like, oh, do you want to take it first? I'm like, no, let me take it like 138,000th after you've done some checking on the thing, right? But that's not, but that's fine because there's trials going. So that's, I don't trust pharmaceutical companies, but I don't think that everything they do is bad. I think that there's, a fairly robust oversight on drugs and medical procedures and stuff. And I think that a lot of times when people end up just not trusting anything that pharmaceutical companies do, no matter what it is, I think it's like motivated reasoning. And I think a lot of if people don't like it because it's not natural, it's going to be a lot of people who want to like use natural remedies versus like a drug that works. So I think that's at play. And I think it's also really kind of neat to think about yourself as enlightened and everybody else being stupid, right? If you remember when you were a kid and you were like, I know something you don't know to like one of your friends, it's like that, but like
Yeah.
an adult version of it about like important issues. It's very, very, people really, really want to know secret information. People really want to have, the answer first. We all still want that. It's not just things that we wanted to do as kids because we're just big kids, right? We're just kids, unfortunately, with bills. So I think that that's at play, and I think that there's also a fairly well moneyed propaganda complex out there pumping this shit out, and I think that most of those people are just doing it for the money, and they don't really care about the people that are you know being taken in by this. It works. And the other thing that happens here too, like let's say that you were skeptical of vaccines, but you weren't like a full-on anti-vaxxer. You're like, oh, I don't know. I heard something weird about the measles vaccine, and maybe if I have kids, I'll wait or talk to my doctor more about it or whatever. Then you join an anti-vaccine group on Facebook, and all these people are like, oh, you're awake and you're aware and you're so smart for questioning this, and everybody around you is just a sheep, and so you end up getting love bombed in these groups by these people that are telling you that you do in fact know something that your neighbors don't know. And so I think that for the end user, for the person who ends up, and this kind of works in recruitment into cults and control groups too, is this I'm special, and all these other people that I just met or that I found in this Facebook group, they recognize that I'm special because I've thought about these things. I think especially maybe lonely people or people who feel disconnected from their community and from their family, I think it's pretty powerful for them, and I think it's a pretty strong social motivator to continue going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I just think that I think that it can be, for obvious reasons, like damaging. Like my dad's got into it. My Some of my family members have got into it, and it's like I think like to a certain extent, I think I can see like why looking at like the JFK thing and being like, well, there's a conspiracy here or whatever. It's like, okay, that's fine. That happened 60 years ago, and maybe they're probably, who knows what the fuck happened. But when you're like talking about the vaccine that just got made and like actively telling people, like you're not a doctor and you're telling people to not take it, it's like, no, sorry, I'm gonna listen to my fucking doctor, and I think it's fucked up of you to be giving advice because you're not a doctor and you haven't really done any research into the fucking science, and it kind of it pisses me off. And
So,
but then I also kind of wonder real quick. I kind of asked you, like, are these people just going, I don't know, lying or going along with the census quo of the Republican Party or whatever? But then I also kind of wondered, maybe it's just like I see things differently than they do. Like maybe I'm just not a MAGA person, and I don't really want to make it political about Trump or anything. It's just the reason what
oh, I
that's like
wouldn't vote
the
for him.
no, but
You
I mean
think
my
you figured
point.
that out?
Yeah, 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 but my point is that that's the easiest way for me, because
Yeah,
you said you don't
and
get into politics, but that's the easiest way for me to like define that type of person. They're a typical MAGA kind of person, and I feel like Sam Harris at least has done a really good job at kind of like pointing out why he doesn't like Trump, and everything that he says seems valid. And then have you noticed that like a lot of people like Jordan Peterson and some of the other guys, they don't really seem to fully give their opinion on Trump. Like it almost
or
seems like they
anything
suck
if they
or
could avoid it.
anything, or anything. But at least Sam Harris will has given his opinion on Trump and the vaccine and all that.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
I think it's again, like we used to cover Sam Harris a lot more on our show about the IDW. We don't cover him as much anymore.
who are
Um,
you covering now as far as that
um,
goes?
the last couple episodes we've been covering, I don't know if you know this guy, Dr. K, healthy gamer. Um, no, we've been covering him. Um, I can actually pull it up real quick.
Is he
Can I
just
tell
like
you?
a? Is he like a? He's not part of the IDW, is he, or is he?
Oh, that doesn't even really exist anymore, right? So he's adjacent.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I mean,
But
we
I thought
found
I
him
thought your group
through.
was only going over the IDW, but it's anybody like in that kind of
So
circle.
our last episode was Alex Jones was on Dr. Drew's show. That we have the one before that was Dr. K, this healthy gamer, talking to some guy named Doug Popes, who I've never heard of, about how they really don't like weed. Um, we had Jordan Peterson on Bill Maher's other show. We call that Bill Maher's Playhouse, like harkening back to Pee Wee's Playhouse. You know that where he's in that room where he like pretends to
Yeah,
drink and get high, but he never drinks or gets high.
that's a wild. The Belmar podcast is pretty wild. Like,
So we've been this a guy named Andrew Gold, who you probably have never heard of. We've been covering him. There's more Dr. K. There's a guy named Jordan Hall. These people called the sense makers, who just talk forever and then don't make any sense. We've been talking about them lately.
so it's
Uh,
kind of just anybody who's kind of like full of shit. You think basically it's
it's definitely people. It's people with a certain like where they and we've done other on that show because it's our most popular one. We've done funny things like we listened to War of the Worlds one night on that show because we needed a break, right? But it's generally people who are like internet dad or internet dad adjacent, where they're trying to have this influence and have this advice, primarily I think for men like 18 to 30, those kinds of people generally. And then like that's going to be the inner circle, and that's it's going to be everybody from Stefan Molyneux to you know
yeah.
Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris. Well, Sam doesn't do it as much, the Weinsteins. But then out from them are going to be people like Dr. Drew or maybe Healthy Gamer. And then another ring out from them might be like Jordan Hall and the Sense Makers. So we don't, because there's been so many episodes of this show now, we can't just make fun of the six people who stood in front of that bush and that photo shoot for the New York Times and that, right? That wouldn't work anymore. So but
Well,
it's
like
certainly like,
the whole thing was kind of it almost seemed like bullshit to begin with because it was like Eric Weinstein says he like coined the phrase, but it like really was never like half the people probably didn't even like really want to be in the group. Like Ben Shapiro and Joe Rogan like were kind of you know what I mean. It was just some like
I don't know, but Joe Rogan stood in front of the plant, didn't he?
yeah, but I think only because like weren't they at it's the same picture. Weren't they at like some like dinner together or something? And then somebody probably just took a
No, that
photo.
there was there's the pictures of all of them individually standing in front of this shrub looking very serious with a little, and maybe the picture almost looks like the X-Files. If you remember kind of how the X-Files was shot, everything was like a little bit dark and mysterious. These pictures all kind
Yeah,
of look like that. And they're all like like portraits of these people. And it was for this
I
article by Barry Weiss for the New York Times in like 2018, that was
isn't
sort of the
Barry
beginning of the
yeah.
IDW as like a popular phenomenon.
Isn't Barry Weiss kind of also part of this though? Isn't she kind of
Yeah,
a little bit full of shit?
she started that university, University of Austin in Texas, and when it first came out, fully like a third of the people on the faculty were on Epstein's flight logs. And so I made this meme, and I was like, it was like the University of Austin, Texas. If the faculty here was good enough for the kids at Epstein Island, they're good enough for your kids too.
Like, well, you wonder, like, she must have just not even. I mean, I feel like she must have not even known. Like, I feel like at this point, so many people are on that list that it's almost just kind of like it's hard to avoid it, right? I mean, it's like how
Well, I
many
guess
people
so.
are on the list? 50
Yeah.
or I mean, 50
No,
is not even that much, but how
I
many?
think it was mostly like people who just claimed to have been canceled. She kind of anybody who claimed to have been canceled and got on a few of the Weinsteins or Sam Harris to talk about it, or Ben Shapiro to talk about it, or maybe Rogan, and they were some had some kind of academic pedigree. She was gonna going to put them on because they look like, because you search them and they have all these followers, and it's just like it's that whole thing's a fucking fraud. I
What
would be
is?
surprised if nobody gets sued or possibly even criminally charged for fraud around that thing, because that thing's
Around what thing?
the Barry Weiss's fake university.
Well, is it still going? Is it still a functioning?
I don't know. I imagine they took people's money, but I haven't heard much. That's why I think that there might be some shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know she had a university, but a lot of them are popping up with universities now. Like I don't know if you know, I'm assuming Jordan Peterson has a university now,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's like
He
so
has
what
that guy
any
Jonathan. What's it? Jonathan Peugeot, who believes that literal demons are interfering with everybody's lives in the physical world. He has that guy giving lectures on fucking Christianity and shit. There, I'm like, dude, this guy is like a demon worshiper. What are you doing?
yeah. Well, it's like for one, like how can anybody just start a university? Like, can anybody just be like, I'm going to start a university?
You and me could, but if we wanted to do if we wanted to do it right, it would take a while to get it going, right? It would be
I
quite a
mean,
while till we've started taking any payments from anybody if we wanted to do it properly.
ultimately, that's just probably what it is. It's probably just a way for him to make more money, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, and then Andrew Tate started his university,
Well,
right?
I mean, that thing was just a Discord server, right? He wasn't even pretending.
Could you imagine being like, I went to the Andrew Tate university?
I paid him, what was it, like $450 to listen to him talk in a voice chat on Discord. God, there's a sucker born every minute, isn't there?
I was gonna say you did. Like I thought you might have done it just to hear what he had to say.
Um, I don't have that, and we're not generating that kind of income yet. But those are kinds of things I would like to be able to do in the future, or to do some investigative work on the more private paywalled communities of some of these grifters and charlatans. But I don't think that's a good use of my resources at this time.
Yeah. Well, then Jordan Peterson too. I mean, doesn't he does this weird thing with religion where he doesn't really believe in religion. And I saw somebody I think on Sam Harris's subreddit be like, "What the fuck is going on with Jordan Peterson?" And he's like, he kind of like he makes fun of like postmodernists, but then he kind of is a postmodernist when it comes to like religion because it's like, I mean, I don't even really know too much about like postmodernism, but basically like he talks about it, but he doesn't really believe it, right? It's like he's not like you would think that he would be a Christian, but he doesn't really believe it. He just talks about religion, right? Like as if it's some holy book that should be like worship, but he doesn't. Right? Is that? Do you
So,
know?
just real quick on postmodernism. I'm not a philosopher, but postmodernism, for anybody who wants like a quick rundown of it. It is, first of all, it's the school of thought that came after modernism, as it's called, postmodernism, and some of the broad strokes are that it's going to be skeptical of some of the grander narratives of what people would call Enlightenment thinking or of modernism, such as, for example, a postmodernist would probably be skeptical of the work of Karl Marx and communism, because it's like a grand narrative about the world. A postmodernist would generally just reject grand narratives. And it's not like one day people woke up and it was like, oh, it was Tuesday yesterday and we were modernist, and it's Wednesday today and now we're postmodernist. These things, they evolve over time. And if people want to know more about this, ContraPoints, Natalie Wynn did a really good video about what is and is not postmodernism. Very good video.
Yeah, it's like the only thing that I really knew about postmodernism, honestly, was like that like nothing. It's kind of like nothing is truth, right? It's not nothing is truth, but it's like um, it's obvious skepticism on stuff, but it's like yeah, like kind of like nothing is true, right? Everything is kind of just like that's kind of like the if you had to like state it in like a short way, it would be like nothing is true, right?
It's
Or
just
am I
it's
getting that
going to be
wrong?
it's going to be tends to be skeptical of the grand narratives about the world, I guess.
Yeah, but the
But
point
but
being
again, I'm
was
not a
that
philosopher, so I may be butchering this, but that's my understanding.
yeah, but like the point being is I don't know enough about postmodernism, but it just seems weird to me to talk about religion all the time, but not believe it, because it's like couldn't I just be like, well, I'm just gonna talk about Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings all the time, and as if it's some book we should aspire to be, but you know what I
So,
mean?
well,
Like what
I mean,
separates?
there are people who go to church, every Sunday and are not they don't literally believe in the work of the church. They go there because their family's there, their community's there, that kind of stuff. But that's not really applicable to Jordan Peterson, right? And there's a lot of the Jewish community has a long history of like skepticism and scientific reasoning, and there's a lot of Jews who are atheists, right? They just identify with that community, and they might still go to temple and all that because that's their community and where their family goes, and they do Passover, and they get together with members of that community. So I think I guess that's a very different thing than what you're describing that Jordan Peterson's doing. But it's very hard for me to. I have no idea what the fuck Jordan Peterson's doing. It's almost to the point where I'm tired of making fun of him, right? Like,
Yeah, it just seems like as I don't, as far as what you're doing, it seems like you could. I mean, I thought about doing this a little while back to where if you're using other people's clips and then you're like basically just analyzing their clips, um, I would think that you would be able to get like a lot of traction somewhat quickly just because you're posting Jordan Peterson's clips. You know what I mean? Like, because you post the clip and then you talk about it or you talk about it before, whatever. But like, people are going to click on it because they want to see, obviously, they know who Jordan Peterson is. And then you obviously give your insight. So I think that's like a really good idea for doing things. And I would imagine you could probably even make some money off of it, right? Because,
I mean, I make my living doing streaming and podcasting, but
okay, okay.
not most of my revenue doesn't come from any of the podcasts. My revenue comes from a variety of places. Like we sell these hats. The Fourth Wall has been very good to us, and so we do memberships through Fourth Wall where people get bonus content.
What's
People
Fourth Wall?
Fourth Wall is our merch provider, but they're much more than that. They've helped me a lot. They've helped me a lot. They've
Like a
helped me make.
Patreon type thing too, where like you
They
can.
they do that, but primarily they started out as a merch provider. They just added memberships because it was easy, and they've been really helpful. But um, I don't know. I don't know because there's a way in which, and I joke about it on stream. There's a way in which I'm trying to monetize an audience of cynics, right? The people that come to watch me, they don't like worship me, right? The way that people worship Jordan Peterson. I would be
As they
appalled.
shouldn't.
I would be appalled.
Yeah,
And
it's
so
it's horrible.
so monetizing like skepticism, cynicism, and yeah, monetizing that stuff, it's been very difficult, actually. I'm doing okay now, but it's been very difficult monetizing that because you're
Well, don't.
almost defending
No,
the
I see what
status
you're saying.
quo in a way, and that's not that exciting.
Well, the thing is, though, is like I would imagine because I didn't do it enough to get anywhere with it, but I would imagine that you would have like so let's just say you're saying why Jordan Peter like you could even say this is why Jordan Peterson is wrong or whatever. You would get a ton of people coming and being like fuck you, blah 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 blah. But the thing is that that would really only kind of amplify your video, all the different like opinions. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's a really good idea, way of doing it. And I'm not saying that any type of monetization on YouTube is hard. I'm not saying that like, but I mean, I think that's a good idea, I guess is my point. Because I would think that you would get people in there who are like disagreeing. Some people would agree with you. Some people would agree with Jordan Peterson. And then they could go into why. And, and I haven't checked out. So that's the thing is I think we only have like a minute here, but I haven't checked out that YouTube that you told me about. I checked out something else which looked kind of like more of like a music thing. So if you want, you can just go
Oh,
ahead and
Local Love,
plug.
probably. You probably found an episode of Local Love.
Yeah, if you want to just go ahead and plug that stuff, and then
Yeah, yeah, for sure. If
and
people,
really quick, like I could go. I was trying to rush everything, and I could go over each person individually.
we'll do this again in a couple months.
Yeah. So whenever you want to come back, go and plug your stuff, and then I feel like I had one last. Oh yeah. Then also I asked if there's anything else to check out, podcasts, movies, music,
Oh,
anything,
I'll start with that.
especially regarding this.
I'll
Yeah,
start
stuff
with
that
that.
you're actually into. Yeah.
A book that if you haven't read it, it's Naomi Klein's book. It is called Doppelganger, and it is a very good book. Um, I'm not going to tell you anything about it. Just trust me, that's a very good book. She
I
also
think I've
wrote the
just
shock. She
heard.
also wrote the Shock Doctrine, which many people have heard of. But
I think I've heard of Doppelganger.
you can find me. Everything's on my website. You can just go to echoplexmedia.com and you can find everything there. Yeah, drop me a line. Link to my Discord is there. Join my Discord. Watch my shows. Buy my merch.
How many podcasts do you have?
I'm trying to think. Okay, I'll just, because I produce shows for other people, but the ones that I'm on, we have a show called The Plex. That's our media analysis, like the week in the news. We have a show called How the Tech Are You, which we talk. It's quick. It's a quicker show. It's just about tech news. We have a show called Down Ballot that's about Bay Area local politics, and then Intellectual Dollar Tree is the one about the IDW. Those are our
Okay.
podcasts.
And how many people are on these podcasts? Is you and a group of friends or something, or just
So
two?
the Plex I do by myself. The tech show I do with two of my friends who used to be software engineers. Both are retired now, actually. Lucky them. Down Ballot I do with the councilman, we call him, because he ran for city council and lost horrifically. So we jokingly started calling him the councilman to make fun of him, and that was his name on the show. And then Intellectual Dollar Tree I do with HK Perrin, who's been my co-host on that show since the beginning.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. And then, oh yeah, then I had to ask, like, there's a concert venue down here called the Echoplex, I think. Are you related to that at all? Or
No, but we do get their. We sometimes get their email. Somebody's like, "I left my sweatshirt there," so we sometimes
okay,
get their email.
yeah. When
No,
I
it's just a
saw that,
coincidence.
I kind of just like assumed that I don't know it was
Yeah,
linked
that,
to
that,
that, but no.
that's just a coincidence. But hey, man, it's been great talking to you. I got to jump. I got something in 13 minutes here.
All right,
Everybody,
see ya.
thanks for listening into the podcast, and make sure you follow me. Just find me at echoplexmedia.com.
Thanks for coming on. It was very interesting. Okay, bye guys.